how do I go on? What's my next step? What's the lesson? And when you start looking at everything that happens like that, it completely changes your perspective. So things aren't happening to you just to happen.
Welcome to Transformative Tea Talk with Soul Aligned Living. We provide education, resources, and tips on holistic health, mindset, yoga, Qigong, and Ayurveda.
So today we're going to talk about the dark night of the soul. We're going to talk about what it is and how you can get through it, our personal experiences with dark night of the soul. I would say what not to do, but I think what not to do is also part of the process also. So we're not going to go to what not to do, just if you do it, this is what could happen, because it's going to be part of the process. Right. So first is, what is dark night of the soul? Dark night of the soul is when you have a perceived collapse of your life as you know it. So a collapse of your old world, something that shakes you to your core, shakes your inner being. It could be divorce, separation, loss of a loved one, loss of a career. And I think also a lot of people had this happen when the pandemic hit and our entire lives were kind of shaken up. The world stopped and everything changed for a lot of people. So I think that happened with a lot of people at that point. So it wasn't necessarily what it typically is, which is something personal to you, but this was a worldwide pandemic that affected a lot of people. So that is where you're going to get your dark night of the soul. And there are stages to the dark night of the soul. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But if you're having any kind of, well, let me back up. This is like back to the basics. So we talk a lot about different things, and this kind of goes to where we are coming from when we are doing some of our tea talks and things like that. So I decided we should probably go back to the beginning, the basics of how this got started, and the process that brought us here to where we are today. So if you are having a lot of depression, anxiety, questioning yourself, questioning your life and those around you, feeling isolated from people, that could be symptoms of dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul, it lasts as long as you need it to, or as long as you allow it. The purpose is for our spiritual enlightenment, to get to our spiritual destination, to find our life purpose. And sometimes, we start off on a path, and when we come, we know what our path is, but we forget it. And then we're stubborn and we go our own way and we want to do our own thing. And we think, this is how I want my life to be. And we do white picket fence and everything's perfect. And I'm going to have a career and a husband and 4 kids and everything's going to be perfect. And then life happens and then it's not that anymore. So then we have to, yeah, good. And then we have to figure out our life from there. And that's where we start entering this dark night of the soul. And it can happen repeatedly. You could have multiple dark night of the souls as you go along with your life and things happen. And it's all about how you process each one as they come along, as how it's going to turn out for you. It could be a few weeks, it could be years and years and years and years. Mm-hmm. It depends on the truths that you need to wake up to, what life lessons you have.
I will share my story. I think the first one that really occurred for me was when my grandmother died. And I had to change my whole identity almost, but it took 12 years for me to get rid of that grief. Carried it very heavily for a long time. But when she passed away, I kind of lost my identity. It was like the one person in the world that loved me unconditionally was gone. And that was earth shattering. Like, now what do I do? And I handled that one badly. I didn't have any of the skills, any of the tools. I went into denial, self-sabotage, totally. I don't want to deal with it. So I shoved it aside. So, and ultimately ended up carrying it for 12 years. Now I've learned things with doing the Qigong and the breathing and being mindful and working through things that now when I have life shattering events, I've learned skills to kind of cope with them and acknowledge that emotion, that process, that trauma, and allow myself to go into that ugliness. And I'm lying because this is what I want to do. I'm just going to call myself out right here. I'm lying. But the ultimate goal is to allow myself to get into feeling those things so that I can process them. And the reason I say I'm lying is because while I know that's what I need to do, I still go, oh, I want to do that. Nope, I'm going to do something else. I'm just going to pretend like it's not there because I am the queen of denial. And it sits with me. The longer I deny it, the longer I avoid it, the longer I have to deal with this. And I kind of get stuck in some ugly phases because I don't want to process it.
And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. And Michelle is my go-to for, okay, I'm having all the feels and I'm all over the place and I'm feeling very self-destructive and help. So yeah, there's that.
So in processing our own personal dark night of the soul, and again, you can have many in your life. So Shannon had one with the loss of her grandmother. And then there's as well, that's one she's had, whether she admits it or not.
Say that last part again.
So whether you admit it or not, that's one dark night of the soul.
What, with my grandmother? Oh,
Yeah.
that one I admit.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot more.
There's others. Yeah. So
a lot more. And recently even trying to, who am I?
Yeah. So, and that's how it starts, is that questioning, you're doing your normal everyday things. You go to work, you come home, you take care of kids or dogs or whatever you do on your own daily life. You're just living your normal everyday life, but you have that yearning for more, want deeper understanding. You know there's something else, but you're not sure what it is. And for me, it was I felt stuck. And I remember talking to my mom and saying, I don't know what it is. I feel stuck. I remember having that conversation a few different times. I just feel stuck. And so then after that, then you have a triggering event happen. And so for me, that was a loss of my career, family, unit, with the separation. And that's what, started for me was my triggering event. And then there's other stages, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit as to what happens whenever you get further along in your path. So the biggest thing is, as we're going through this, and you recognize any of this where you could be in one of these stages, the biggest thing is that you have to learn to accept whatever life is presenting you with at this time. So whatever's going on, and I'll say it a lot, I'm like, oh, so this is what we're doing now? Okay. And it's not passivity, that's a word, I don't know. It's not that I'm passive or I'm just like nonchalant. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what life is showing me. And what am I going to learn from this lesson? Everything is a lesson. So every single day I have things happen. I'm like, okay, what's the lesson in this? And it's very easy to fall in that pattern of the negative spiral of, oh my gosh, this is happening. And then this, and then this, and then this. But instead of going into that negative spiral, you accept, okay, this is what life is giving me. What do I learn from this so that I can go on to the next step? How do I get out of this stage right here? If this is what life is giving me and I'm not happy with this, how do I go on? What's my next step? What's the lesson? And when you start looking at everything that happens like that, it completely changes your perspective. So things aren't happening to you just to happen. You're not having just a shit day just to have a shit day. There's a lesson in it. There's a lesson in every single thing that happens to us.
Yeah.
And so taking that and then accepting it and saying, okay, what can I? You kind of have to step back and pull your emotions out of it a little bit. What can I learn from this? And then acceptance of that. And then whatever that lesson is, you know, if you notice the lesson, you're like, okay, integrate it into your life, because what's going to happen next is that is going to circle back around to you again in a different way, or sometimes in the same way. It's going to circle back. And did you learn your lesson? If you didn't learn your lesson, you're going to keep repeating it. You're going to do this over and over and over again until you learn that lesson. So it's not just learning the lesson, it's taking the lesson and integrating it into your everyday life. And then moving on with serenity. So whatever that lesson is, integrate it into your life, and then continue on with serenity and knowing there's going to be something else. And you're going to repeat that cycle. And then, but that's how you can get to the point where you're ending that dark night of the soul, that where you're constantly depressed and feeling isolated, and the anger, resentment, anxiety, feeling like you're just lost. That's how you're going to end those feelings, is by using those lessons. Old souls, if you're an old soul, you're going to have sometimes tougher lessons that you have to learn, and it might be harder. If you have a big ego, it's going to be more difficult for you, because you're not going to accept the lessons. You're not going to trust the universe, and you're going to try to control everything. And in this, one of the biggest things is you can't control it. You can't control the lessons in life. You can't control other people. You can't control other situations. The only thing you can control is yourself and how you react to those everyday triggers. So basically, the dark night of the soul tears you down, or what you perceive yourself to be, tears that perception down. Doesn't really tear you down, even though it might feel like it.
Sure.
It tears that perception of who you think you are. So the important thing, again, accept the lesson and allow that lesson to mold your life as you move forward. And then, so talking about the stages, I said earlier, you're living your normal everyday life, and then you have this triggering event that happens to you, something that shakes you to your very core. That's when your dark night begins. You meet your ugly inner demons that none of us like to meet, that we have to all work on. And I just, during our retreat last week, got a reading and was told that I need to work more on my inner demons. And like, but I already have. And the message I got was, go deeper, go deeper. So it's a always occurring event. So you have to meet your fears and your darkest inner demon in order to heal those wounds. So even though I think I've healed a lot of wounds, there's still more there that I have to dig deeper for. So when you're in stage, this is when you take action. This is when you do your healing things to get over this, to deal with it. You have to take your action. And that could be, that's doing a lot of self-work, journaling. If you've been in the group, I know we did the journaling challenge, the 30-day journaling challenge last year, I think. Doing that inner work, using those prompts to do some inner work on yourself. And I believe part of the reading last week was for me to go ahead and do that second 30-day journaling. So I'll be doing that soon. Don't know when, but doing some journaling.
I want to say something about that journaling. I've come a long way since my darkest night of the soul, and to where I'm like, I don't use prompts, I don't use guided meditation. I can connect pretty quickly, and I do my own journaling and all, but I did some of your journaling. And there was one prompt, and I can't even remember what it was. And I was like answering it, and there was stuff that I did not know was there. I can feel it right now. I was like, something that I thought I had processed. It was like, think of a time when, and I forget whatever it happened, but it took me back to that darkest night of my soul. And I was just writing and writing and writing, and I felt all this emotion coming up, and I was like, whoa. And then when I was done with it, I thought, I thought that was okay. I thought that had all been processed, but apparently there was something still there. So there is a lot of value in doing the 30-day challenge, and I would love to do it again because I didn't get to do all of them.
Yes.
So anyway, little aside there, but it's just when you think, even if something happened years and years and years ago, it sometimes there's a part still there.
Yeah.
That needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. So Tiffany just commented she didn't take last year's journaling challenge seriously, but would definitely accept the challenge this time. So we are going to be starting the challenge over. We're going to do the 30-day challenge, but it's going to be a 60-day challenge this time. So it'll be a repeat of the 30 days. And if you've done the 30-day, this is completely separate from our talk, but it has to do with it. You still have to do the first 30 days because something different will come up each time you do it. Every time I do those journal prompts, something different comes up. So it's not going to be a repeat of what you experienced last year if you did it, or if you did it and you got overwhelmed and were like, I'm not doing this anymore. Because that happened to a lot of people, because I had people message me and say, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. This is too easy.
I like it.
They're like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Continue with it. Like if you're going to do it, do the challenge and stick with it, because different things will come up for you. And that's just an aside, that is one way you can work through your healing process things. Another one is I really like emotional, the purge writing. So in your journaling, this is something you keep. You have a journal you keep, you can refer back to it. You can see what you wrote last year, 2 years ago, whatever. With the emotional purge writing, you just write. Even if you start off with, I don't know what to write here, I'm just going to write. And then you just keep saying that over and over again until your mind is like, oh, I have lots to say. And then it goes. And then you have 12 minutes from that time you started to just write. And you don't stop. You don't pick up your pen. If the thoughts stop, you just write, I'm not sure what to say here. I need something to say. And then your higher self is going to be like, oh, here's some more trash. And then you'll just keep writing for that 12 minutes. And then you do not go back. You do not read it. You immediately crumple it up and go burn it. Get rid of it. You let that go. So that's different than journaling. So I like to use both. Journaling is something you want to keep, hold on to, refer back to. Emotional purge writing is something you do and you get rid of it. You let it go.
Right.
Meditation.
I'm going to interject two things. One,
Okay.
When I did the journaling, some really hard stuff came up, and that's where learning those techniques to deal with emotions, to observe them and process them are very, very important. I think one of them, I called Michelle at 1 o'clock in the morning when I was journaling and going, how do I deal with it? Like, whoa, shook me to my core. She walked me through some understanding, having that friend that you can process with, somebody that can help you through that is vitally important. Having the skills to process some of these emotions that are going to come up are vitally important. And second, just a little tidbit of advice. It's easier to burn them after you shred them into tiny bits and put them in a small container. Because I've almost set the house on fire once or twice, rolling my papers up and burning them. So just for me personally, I found that if you shred them into tiny bits, it kind of can be therapeutic as well. Put them into a small container and then you can set fire on them and it's just easier. Those are my two things.
Yeah, thank you. So, and if you're calling a friend on this, I'm going to interject this. If you're calling a friend, you don't want this to be just any friend.
No.
Because if you just call any friend, some people are going to be just like, oh, I agree with you. Everything is wonderful. Everything's perfect. And they won't call you out on your bullshit. Don't call that friend.
Don't call that friend.
Don't call that friend. You need someone who's going to be like, oh, this is what, this is what I see. This is what I think. Someone that you feel comfortable with and that feels comfortable enough with you. Or call your coach. Interject that there. So anyways, as you're continuing on, so you're in this dark night of the soul, you're processing through all of this, you're doing the journaling, meditation, yoga, qigong are wonderful things for it. Anything that brings more self-awareness and healing of those inner wounds. And we'll be talking more about that on later Tea Talks. But then you're going to begin this roller coaster. So you're going to be thinking, I'm doing really well. I've been doing this, I'm healing, I have all these successes behind me, and then something's going to happen and you're going to have a failure. And you have to, and that's when that lesson where I say you're going to keep getting these lessons, and it's always going to be a different lesson or sometimes the same lesson. That's the roller coaster. You're going to do really good, and then you're going to tank. And you're going to do really good, and you're going to tank. You're going to do really good, and you're going to tank. You're going to do really good, and then you're going to tank again. And that's just part of the process. That's the roller coaster. And yes, I kept saying that over and over again because I was watching my hand go across the screen and I had to get to the end because a little OCD over here. I couldn't finish in the middle. So during that process, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I messed up. I can't do this. I'm not capable of this. But you are, and you have to give yourself grace because everyone that's going through this goes through these cycles. It's not that you're the biggest screw up in the world and you really mess things up and you can't fix it. You can fix anything. So as you're continuing on, you're going to do those cycles, and just know it's part of the process. Accept that is part of the process. Except you're going to have successes, you're going to have failures, and it'll cycle back. If you're doing really well right now, good. If you're not, that's okay because you're about to be up here again.
Right. I want to say something about that too. And maybe you can address this. I don't know, but it can take years. It took me years in my 20s of being, together and completely not together. And it just went on and on and on, even into my second marriage, because I hadn't done the full work that I needed to do, or perhaps I hadn't learned my lessons that I needed to learn. I don't know. But also because I think I stepped so far away from who I was that I didn't recognize the person that I was. But in those moments at the peak, I remembered and I was okay. But then life was hard then. And so it took years for me, and it can take years. But just try to watch and learn as you go. Because I was, even though I'm sitting here thinking that I wasn't watching and learning, I was watching and learning,
Mm-hmm.
or else I would still be there. So I did come out of it, but it seemed like it would never stop.
Mm-hmm.
It did.
Yeah. And that's where that, paying attention to those lessons. And even though subconsciously you're paying attention to the lessons, even though you might not be consciously paying attention to the lessons.
It got better. It was like this, but it can take a while.
And it's self-preservation, really, because your body, your soul's like, hello, what is wrong with you? I don't want to do this again. So your like subconscious is like, let's fix this. And you're like, I don't want to.
Yes.
And you're like this stubborn little child. And your body's like, please, let's not do this again. And you're like, this is what I want to do. And, like you're a toddler. And you're, I don't care if it's good for me. I don't want to do it.
Yes. Yeah, so it was a lot of that. So probably years because I did have that attitude. I was like, nope, I'm not going to be that person again. I'm not going to go back to who I was. Nope.
Yeah.
Till the universe took a big hammer and went, bam.
Yeah. I like to say I got hit with a Mack truck. So during that time when you're doing that, because you're going to do it, everybody does. We all do that. You're cycling and you're doing the roller coaster. Give yourself grace. That is the biggest thing, because we're the quickest to beat ourselves up on this, always. So don't beat yourself up. Give yourself grace. Remember that it's a process and it's a cycle. So if you're in the middle of it, you might feel like there is no hope and there's nothing you can do, but there is. And if you'll watch our Tea Talks, we talk about a lot of those. We go over everything, and it's all sporadic because we're a little ADD over here. But we're trying to work, that's something we're working on. But we give you the tools you need. And then coaching is available too. But even if you don't ever do coaching, if you just pay attention to what we talk about on the Tea Talks, that's all you ever need, because your higher self, I'm just about to talk myself out of a job here. Your higher self is going to be the one you need for the guidance the most. It's just some people need help to get to that point. So, but we really all have it within us. So practice your self-love if you're going through that.
Mhm.
It is very important during that stage. Yes, self-love.
It is powerful. I didn't have that when I was going through that. None, zero, zip.
I
I
learned
think
it
that's
as
the
I was
root
going
of a
through.
lot of our issues is the self-love. It really is. And the more we love ourselves and turn off those voices, because the baby loves themselves. The 6-month-old loves themselves. The 1-year-old, they love themselves. It's when the outside voices come in and start saying, no, you're bad. No, that's bad. And then you internalize it and you learn to not love yourself through years of outside, and it's not intentional. I don't think any parent ever says, oh, you're only lovable if you're good. That's never the intention, but that's their stuff that they're carrying down. But that's another topic. We learn to not love ourselves, and we learn to people please in order to be valuable and all of that. And you've got to turn that off so we can start the process of loving ourselves again, and then we can grow.
Yes. And our next Tea Talk is going to be about how you can practice real self-love, which isn't just going to get your nails done and getting pedicures and spending a day on yourself. It's doing the work to actually form your self-love. So that'll be our next Tea Talk. I just made an executive decision.
There you go. I like that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to write that down.
Write it down.
Our next Tea Talk is real self-love.
So we've been talking about a real self-love one, I think, since we started doing Tea Talks, and we just haven't done it. So we're going to do that. So as we continue on, we're doing the cycle, we're doing the roller coaster, and you're starting to gain deeper understanding. You're starting to heal your wounds, even though it does not feel like it. That's what you're doing. You are healing your wounds, and healing is ugly. And then you're discovering your life purpose. Your dharma is your life purpose. And so you have to be accepting of that. So as these things are happening, you still have to be accepting that. That's going to be the key word for this, is acceptance. Acceptance of where you are, acceptance of the process, and then what your life purpose is may not be what you thought it was, and acceptance of that. So you will get that clarity as you continue on. And then you will find balance. Balance, you'll begin building the life that you really want, that you've come to want, the life around your life purpose. And I think this might be like the stage I'm in right now, maybe, I don't know. I resonate a lot with this stage, the balance stage. You don't receive as much guidance from your higher self or from your spirit guides because you are becoming your higher self. So you already have that inner wisdom. So you're not needing that external validation of, I need someone to tell me these things. And I always tell my mom, who, like, her guides talk to her, and I'm always like, they don't talk to me. And she's like, you already know. You have it, you know it, you just know. I'm like, but I don't. She's like, but you do. You do all the time. You make a decision and you're like, this is what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, okay, yes, I do that. So, and this is where you're going to end up being your best version. And this is also I think the stage you're going to stay in is between balance and best version. And then you could cycle back around to beginning again, also, depending on how you fight your dark night of the soul and how well you accept it. But then you're in this stage of, I'm the best version of myself, but you're also constantly working on that best version of yourself. You're always constantly doing the work. You don't stop and you're like, oh, I've made it, I'm here, I'm done. You're continuing on with that. So you're always your best version. Shannon looks like she wants to say something. I don't know if she does.
No, I was just thinking about the yin yang symbol where, there's the light and the dark, and there's a little there's absence of light in one and there's dark in the other, and it's a constant circle where
Yes.
we're never completely light or completely dark. We're always shades in the middle.
Yeah.
And we're always moving.
Yeah. And that's true. And we cycle back. Like we will cycle back whenever we need to. So when you're at this best version of yourself, so things that you will recognize whenever you get to that part where you're like, I've overcome this dark night of the soul, I'm in a point where like I feel more balanced, is you're going to recognize the negative patterns. You'll see them clear as day.
Right.
And you're going to say, I choose not to participate in that anymore. Instead of being like, "Oh, well, maybe it'll be different this time. Well, I could do this," or "No, I don't want to do that." But you have that acceptance. So you see it and you make a conscious effort that you're not going to participate, that you don't want that in your life. You catch yourself before you react. And that's a hard one. But you stop. You use that P-PAL. If you've watched our Tea Talks, you've heard P-PAL before. We'll talk about P-PAL a lot. And then you control your emotions. You self-regulate your own emotions. But when you have those triggers, you don't react to the triggers anymore. You see the trigger, you have the trigger, and you see it for what it is. It's a trigger. And so you process it differently than what you were before. So takeaways from all of that is trust the universe, give acceptance to wherever you are on that path, process the lesson. And this is, Shannon talked about this a little bit earlier. You don't hide from it, whatever the lesson is. And I used to, I still do, I'll say, because whatever I'm in the middle of, I don't have time to stop and deal with that. And I do the Scarlett O'Hara, I'll think about that tomorrow.
Right.
Think about that another day. And so you can't hide from it, you have to process it. So sometimes that means just sitting with that emotion. And that's where that taking alone time works. If you're constantly surrounded by people, there's always someone with you, you're always distracted by other things. You have to take that time alone. Go for a walk alone, take a bath alone, go sit outside and just sit in your lawn chair alone, spend some time by yourself and deal with the pain. Sometimes you just have to sit with the pain instead of drinking it away or exercising it away or working it away or whatever, everybody has a different thing. Sit with it, feel it, and then heal it. Ask your spirit guides for help. Ask your ancestors for help.
Ask
your coach.
I want to say something too about your spirit guides and your ancestors and all. It's different for everyone. Mm-hmm. So like I tell you, Michelle, you are communicating, you are getting information. It is intuitive. So you might not hear a voice in your head or outside your head or somewhere saying, do this, or here's some good advice.
But that's what I want.
Sometimes. So I don't want everyone to think that you have to physically hear to know. Mm-hmm. It happens in so many different ways. It happens in circumstances. It happens in feelings. It happens in just knowing. It happens in sensing. There's all different ways that you get this communication or.
Yeah. It's that gut feeling sometimes.
Yeah, it's a gut. You can listen to your heart. There's some exercises you can do. Maybe we'll do it one day where you can learn to feel your heart's yes and your heart's no. So you're asking a question, but there's a feeling you get once you learn how to tune in. It can help you with decision making and things like that. So you're getting guidance all the time through signs and synchronicities. A lot of the time I can look back on my life and be like, yep, right there that happened, right there that happened, right there I was getting hammered, but I wasn't listening. But so it's not always an audible word for word, here's what you need to do today. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is, but it just depends. It's different for everybody.
Yep.
And I use my tarot cards and my pendulum, and that's where I get my answer. Because I need it in black and white. So let me find that, this is what this card means. Oh, and then some meetings aren't for me, some meetings are, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's different for everyone. Everyone has their thing.
Well, and the other thing that I want is let the past be the past as you're going along this journey. Let what's in the past stay in the past. And that doesn't mean that you don't address things from your past. That's not what I mean. I mean, don't go back to things that are no longer for you. If you've left a relationship that wasn't working for you, you've left a job that wasn't working for you, you left an area that wasn't working for you, don't go back to the past and think, okay, well, I have done this stuff now, I'm going to go back to this place. It's no longer in alignment for you. You have new things that are going to be in alignment for you as you go through this process. You will have people that come into your life that are more aligned with your life's purpose. You will, and sometimes that might be old people from a previous life, but they will come in naturally and organically. It won't be a, you know what, I really want to talk to this person, and I know we didn't have a good relationship before, and we had a really bad falling out, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to, because I've learned all these things, and I want them to know I've learned all these things, and I'm going to show them I'm a different person. That's not the way to do it. If it happens organically, you just end up together one day. You just end up talking. It's going to be
3 hours in the parking lot before work.
Yeah. So that happens. And you won't even realize it at the time, but it's not something you seek out. That happens. It's completely organic, and you don't even know until it's happened. You're like, huh, okay, cool. But you don't go seek out to prove a point or to show someone. It's going to be all organic. But you will find people, you will lose people in the process, and you will find people in the process that are more in alignment with you. And sometimes people choose to grow with you, and sometimes people choose, they're not in an area where they're not at that place. They don't have capacity to go through their dark night of the soul, or it's not their time. So you can't take people with you. Sometimes even people you love, you can't take them with you. Sometimes you have to go on your own. And sometimes people go along in the process with you, but you don't get to choose who or what. And that's another where you have to get that acceptance of not everyone's going to continue that path with you. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to be around, that you won't have communication with them, but they will not be in alignment with the life you're building. And so you have to recognize that, and you have to be willing to let those people go for a little while and let things be. That's part of the acceptance. Yeah. You guys have anything else you want to add to that?
A little bit. I just, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but I know that we're in our process of healing. A lot of things will come up that we just have to remember not to judge harshly, like, and remember that for the most part, I think people only did the best that they could, regardless of what it is. So if you have to step away from that for your own self, then by all means do it. But try to keep the hatred out of it, unless it's, yeah. And keep some understanding, and a little bit of understanding. And I'm just gonna, my mom was not the best mom in the whole world. She had a whole lot of issues, and I spent a whole lot of time hating her. I really did. But then as I started healing, I realized, she was just a project of her, a projection of her own traumas and her own insecurities and her own illnesses, and it didn't have anything to do with me. It affected me greatly, and there were times when I had to distance myself. But if you keep the hate with you, and then you focus on that instead of your own healing. So
everyone is doing the best they can at that moment.
Love and understanding.
They're doing the best they can with what they have, what they know.
Right.
So no, I don't think anybody gets up in the morning and they're like, I'm going to do the worst I can today. Everybody, nobody gets up and they're like, I'm going to have I'm going to do everything I can in my power to make this horrible day for everybody around me. Nobody wakes up and says that. Everybody is doing the best they can with what they know in that very moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes the capacity that we have is different. So my capacity is going to be different than Shannon's capacity. So if I'm going to work, Shannon and I have the same job. I'm going to work, and it's a stressful day. My level and my capacity to handle it is different than what Shannon's is. And I'm still doing the best I can, and Shannon's still doing the best she can.
I'm working on it, but I'm right here.
So everyone's capacity is different. So you can't judge and say, you know, like, well, why didn't she do this? And why, well, why about that? And, you know, all of that, because your level of healing and your level of capacity is different than everybody else's. And so there's always going to be someone that is further along in the healing process than you. It has greater capacity than you. And there's always going to be people that have less capacity. And there are further or less along on their journey. I don't know if I said that right, but you get the gist, I think. So it's important not to judge where others are. And it's also important not to judge where you are when you see someone that is further along on their process, not to judge yourself and compare yourself to anyone else. Because this is your journey.
To judge your past.
Yeah.
Because if I could go back and change, if 20-year-old me, I wish 20-year-old me knew what 60-year-old me knows.
Yeah.
My children would have had a much different childhood, but I can't change that.
No.
That happened. And so, and I beat myself up for that for a long, long time. And that's not healthy and that's not healing. And so it is and it takes some work. One day you don't say, well, I'm not going to feel bad about that anymore.
Nope.
And you don't. It is a process like everything when you're growing and healing. But it's woulda, shoulda, coulda has no place in your healing because it's not going to fix anything and it's going to stall your growth. So, but getting back to that self-love, self-acceptance, and just recognizing, okay, this happened. I can't change it at all. It's nothing I can do is going to make that go away. That happened. So here I am now. Here's who I am now. I love myself now. And hopefully my kids will forgive me.
Yeah.
I'm hoping there's some good times there too, but.
Well, and that if I had not had the childhood I had, and I did not go through the traumas that I went through as a child, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I would be somewhere else doing something else. So it is what it is exactly what it is. Because without our life and our traumas, we're not who we are. So you can't, if you go back and you take away those things, you take away all those lessons with it. We could talk a little bit about the cycling if you guys want to before we wrap up. Because I know I've cycled, I think. I have cycled still, I think.
I think you always do, because things are always happening.
Yeah. And the chaos of life doesn't ever stop. Like there's always going to be something. And so it's taking those on a daily basis and learning from whatever that is. Because it's like, I feel always like my life is in chaos, especially now where I'm in this area of transition, but it's taking each day and being like, okay, well, what can I learn from this? Well, what am I going to do differently next time on the daily basis? And I think as you progress through, you learn to do that. Yep. And you don't see it as the hits keep coming and you're like, why me, why me, why me? Well, I know why me, because it's my lesson. I don't have to say, well, why is this happening to me? These things keep happening to me. I don't get stuck in that mindset because I know why they're happening. They're happening because I have a lesson to learn and I need to pay attention and I need to learn it. So as you progress through your dark night of the soul, you'll come to that awareness and you'll recognize that in yourself.
Yeah, I think you said before, the problems, they never stop. The events in life never stop. We just get better at handling them or moving through them. We don't get stuck anymore. We eventually just get better at moving through them
Mhm.
because there's always going to be something.
Yeah, always something, always something else. So on that note, I think we'll wrap up, and we will be starting a new journaling challenge. I will post that in the group. I'll get all of that together and we'll start that again. But we will do a 60-day journaling challenge now. I have the other 30 days ready. I just never did it online. I never posted it. And like I said, if you've done it before, like I've done the whole journaling challenge before, but every time you do it, something else comes up. So I encourage everyone to join that and to do that. If you're watching us on YouTube and you want to participate in the journaling challenge, you have to go to our Facebook group, Soul Aligned Living. And that's where we're going to be posting the journal prompts. And there's actually a book that I don't have all put together yet, but I'm working on it. It's one of my many, many things I'm working on. So that will be coming up soon. Well, with that, everybody have a great day. Have a good weekend, and we will see you next Saturday morning for Tea Talk.